That report from Mark Hannaby. I didn't quite understand the ducks either. Rhodri Morgan himself, though, keeping very tight-lipped when he arrived at a constituency meeting in Cardiff on Friday evening. This is what he had to say.
Hello, First Minister.
Evening.
Will you be making any announcements on your future this evening?
He's staying forever. We can't afford to let him go.
Well, joining me in the studio to discuss the Labour leadership are three watchers of Welsh politics. Denis Campbell, editor of the UK Progressive e-magazine, the political communications consultant Iestyn Davies, and a grassroots activist and member of the Islwyn Labour Party, Nigel Dix. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Iestyn, I suppose we should start really by discussing Rhodri Morgan's dominance of the devolution project almost since the very beginning. It did have that false start under Alan Michael's leadership, but even then Rhodri Morgan's absence as First Minister was the shadow over it all. He came in and he stabilised it. He's almost been the colossus of it, hasn't he?
Well, he's certainly a figure of strength for the Labour Party, but indeed for devolution, irrespective of how you view your politics, left or right or nationalist, Rhodri Morgan has made devolution work. Ron Davies built it. Rhodri Morgan made sure that it could work on a day-to-day basis. However, some people would say that maybe from time to time his politics and his policy programme lacked imagination. There was an understanding perhaps that some of the decisions that were made around things such as the bonfire of Quangos was trying to find a way forward and trying to find some headlines. And in many situations he's let other people, such as Edwina Hart, take the lead on NHS reorganisation and therefore has been eclipsed in terms of day-to-day policy affairs.
All right, that's interesting because Denis Campbell, you've been writing in the most recent edition of your magazine about what you see as a leadership vacuum when Rhodri Morgan goes, which would seem to contrast slightly with the take that Iestyn has there.
Well, a leadership vacuum only in the sense that you're having an iconic figure, someone who's been around for several decades, suddenly leaving the position. And when we look back and we look at, even in the U.S. political system, when the House Speaker of the United States, Tip O'Neill, retired, he was replaced by somebody that nobody ever remembers, even though James Wright was a legislator and a leader in his own right. If you ask 9 out of 10 people, you would not know who followed Tip O'Neill, even though he was the 100th. It's sort of like being Pete Conrad, the third man to walk on the moon. Everybody remembers Neil Armstrong, and whoever ultimately moves into this seat is going to probably end up becoming the Pete Conrad of Wales.
I suppose what this does do, Nigel Dix, is give the Labour Party, a chance just to stop and consider where it is and where it wants to go. Would you like to see that debate happen?
Yes, definitely. We're in the future, the Welsh Labour Party, I think, we need to have a wide-range debate on what we stand for, how we engage with the electorate and move this process forward. Any candidate that comes forward, I believe as many candidates as possible, and we have an open debate and no coronation, no trade unions pushing people onto the party. It's got to be somebody that most people can get behind, that we can focus our support for and get out there and get back where we should be.
So do you think that kind of debate has been missing?
Yes.
And just explain then what the concern is for you. What is it that should have been under discussion that hasn't been, in your view?
Well, I feel that the One Wales agreement was pushed through. A lot of activists were ignored with that.
That's the coalition agreement with Plaid Cymru.
With Plaid Cymru, yeah. A lot of activists had a different viewpoint on that. That was sort of pushed through with the trade union block vote. Activists were ignored, and that doesn't go well with the people who actually go out and knock the doors. Because every Saturday I'm out knocking doors, talking to people in the constituency, so I to keep my feet on the ground and try the bread and butter issues that affect working people in Wales. And I feel that we've got away from that.
Iestyn, what's your take on that?
Well, I think Nigel is right in terms of what it's done. The unfortunate consequence of coalition is that Rhodri Morgan has allowed himself to be held ransom by the nationalists. Now, if you're of that particular persuasion within the Labour Party, and there is a constituency that thinks that's a good idea, then that's okay. But of course, a political party has to be united to move forward, and it has to be united behind a leadership figure. And now is the right time for New Labour in Wales, not the kind of New Labour you have in England, but a new form of Labour in Wales to find a way forward. Otherwise, the kind of vacuum that we talked about could exist.
Are you suggesting then that it could be for a new leader actually to tear up the One Wales agreement in a coalition? Because that would be an extremely radical decision.
It would be radical, but it would need something, and it's something you can imagine something like Hugh Lewis doing, coming right towards the end of this assembly and saying, right, the deal is off, we're going forward as Labour in Wales, and this is our manifest, and this is the way forward. It makes things cleaner. It would come after the general election, so the time is available to do it, but it gives you that clear communicated message that Wales has a Labour Party that stands for something unique.
Can you see something like that happening, Denis?
Well, you also have a broader issue, I think, and that's the fact that you've done no real grooming for succession, so that you've got a situation where you've got a number of qualified individuals to step into the position, but they have no recognition. And if you look at the political landscape across the world, no one is paying any attention to who are going to be the next leaders and the next people that are going to shape the agenda. I mean, even Gordon Brown was, put into the prime ministership by default. And I think you're going to have a similar situation here, in that there's no real definitive plan to bring others along within any of the political parties. So it's very hard, and it's a factor of where we are in our politics.